This is an essential level Pilates workout for November 2022. So we're going to stand in a nice tall position with the chest open, shoulders back and down, imagining that there is a rope from the crown of the head running up towards the ceiling. Start by lifting your shoulders up as you breathe in, so we've got elevation of the scapula, and then breathing out to lower your shoulders down. That's depression of scapula. So it's a breath in to lift, a breath out to lower. Working through the entire range of elevation, depression of the shoulder girdle. And whenever we move our shoulder girdle, we'll get a corresponding change in the position of our shoulder joint, so it will look like our arms are changing position as well. We make this our last one of elevation, depression of shoulder girdle, and then it's a more complex movement of a shoulder roll. Now, I like to roll shoulders backwards because it promotes a feeling of an open chest, especially when you're in the back and down position. On the next one, we'll hold that back and down position, keeping the shoulder girdle stabilised down the back, bending the elbows to a right angle. And this movement pattern is external rotation of our shoulder joint. We sometimes call the exercise a dumbwaiter or the flasher, but you're trying to hold your scapula in a gentle retraction, and you take your arm into external rotation. We'll do 2 more of these, opening up into the front of the shoulder capsule, and then from that last one, releasing down. Okay, now I'm going to move to work on the neck a little bit. Our movement pattern will be a chin retraction into a gentle extension. We'll release from the extension, release from the retraction. So with your retraction, you pull your head horizontally backwards, and then with your extension, you gaze towards the ceiling. Release it and release the retraction. What I don't want you to do is just look up towards the ceiling without pulling into retraction, because this will tend for most of us to bring us into hyperextension. The movement pattern of the retraction flattens the cervical curve, and then you can get a nice gentle lengthening into extension of that cervical curve. Whereas if we're here and we just go straight into extension, because we're already hyperextended, it's not quite a nice thing for our neck to do. So it's a pull back, gaze up, gaze down, release from the pull back, gaze goes up, gaze comes down, we release from the pull back. We'll pull back, gaze up, gaze down, release the pull. One more time, pull back, gaze up, gaze down, releasing from the pull. Moving into a squat, and with our squat, maintaining neutral spine as we always do when we practice our Pilates squats. This puts us into a reduced range, so we can squat much lower than this. However, for the purposes of what we're doing with our exercises, we're not going to. We're going to squat to the point where our body is at roughly 45-degree angle from the vertical. Weight goes back into the heels, and it's as if you're sitting down into an imaginary chair. We'll work 4 more squats, and 3. That's 2. And when we finish the last one, we limber up our lower back with a few standing pelvic tilts. So we're going to tuck the tail between the legs, stick the bottom up into the air. Tuck the tail between the legs, stick the bottom up into the air. And we'll get this corresponding change in the curve in our lumbar spine whenever we move our pelvis. You might find that if you bend your knees, you get a much bigger range of movement with your pelvis, and hence a much deeper stretch into your lower back muscles, or more strength work into your rectus abdominal muscles. You'll generally feel it where you're tight. If you're tighter in the back muscles, you'll feel this as a stretch for your lower back muscles. If you're weaker in the abdominals, you'll feel that this is quite a lot of work for the rectus abdominals to change the position of your pelvis. Okay, find a neutral pelvis in standing so that the bones at the front of the pelvis are rough and level. Extend your knee when you're there, and then do your zip and hollow into your core muscles. Dynamic forwards lunges with a double arm float. So we're landing with a heel toe strike, bending the knees, and coming back with a toe heel push off. As you're working through your lunges, just change legs each time as you're stepping into and out of your lunge. Try to keep your torso upright. If you're managing any issues with hip joints that aren't moving as well as they should do, you may find that causes you to lean a little bit further forwards. But if it's just a case that actually this is quite easy to lean forwards because you don't have to bend as much with your legs, whereas staying upright is much harder on your legs, then I would definitely like you to use those leg muscles as you go into your lunges, please. Let's go one more to each side with lunges. And then when we finish our last one and come back to our standing position, we're going to take our shoulder rolls, much bigger this time. So describing circles with your elbows. We'll extend the elbow circles to include arm circles. Change the arm that passes in front each time and take that shoulder joint through its full range. We'll do one more and then hold in a W position. Your elbows lower than your shoulders. Fix your pelvis. Rotate side and centre, isolating into thoracic rotation with your spine twisting standing. One more in each direction with spine twists in standing. And then when you come back to the centre from that last one, releasing our arms down. So this time, let's combine our dumb waiter with a heel raise action. Challenging your balance, working your calf muscles, as well as challenging the range of movement that you have in your shoulder joint of external rotation. Two more of these, and then on the last one, we'll release it down. Okay, chin retraction into a little bit of a nose circle. One more in this direction, and then we'll circle it back. Last time through, releasing from nose circles to work on squat. As you go into squat, can you hold and lift one heel, lower it to come out of your squat, go into your squat and then lift your opposite heel, lower it, come out of your squat. Continue to work at that level. For those of you who want more of a challenge, you can squat and lift both of your heels. But if you find that it's preferable for you to stay with single heel lifts, then you stay with your single heels. Last two. And then final one. Okay, into standing knee lifts. So we'll sway our body weight onto one leg, pick the opposite leg up, release down, sway our body weight, pick up with knee lift and release down. Whenever we do knee lift, we're making sure that we don't do a hip hitch. So if you find the brim of your pelvis, then both sides of your pelvis should stay at the same level, and you shouldn't get this going on with a change in level of your pelvis when you're coming up into your knee lift, okay? So you're using the muscles at the front of your thigh to lift your leg up, muscles in your waist to stabilise it. And now we're going to challenge the muscles in the back of the leg to extend out. Please come up into your knee lift. Don't make it too high on your first one. We're going to go into knee extension, knee bend and release down. Now when we do knee extension and knee bend, it's the curve in your lower back. We don't want to see any change in that curve in your lower back, okay? So if you're coming up into your knee lift and you're coming really high, you'll automatically get a flattening of your lumbar curve. I don't know if you saw that, and a tuck of your tail between your legs. In Pilates, because we're always working to keep this neutral, then keep your knee lift low, and that should keep your neutral spine position as you're working on your knee extension. Now it is actually a normal movement pattern that when you get your knee so high you will flatten and flex your back. So please don't be concerned if that does happen when you're practicing this one. Just release the height of the knee a little bit and just work to keep it in the neutral position. A lot of this is about awareness of, where is my body in space, and can I make my body be in this shape in space while I do this with my leg? And that's what we're basically doing with our knee lift into knee extension. We'll make this our last one. And then we're going to do some dynamic lunges with a little bit of rotation. This might get all a little bit wobbly now. So stepping forwards with your right leg and come down into your lunge. Going a bow and arrow rotation to your right, come out of the rotation and then step back out of the lunge. Now go with your left leg into your lunge. Bow and arrow rotation left, come out of the rotation, step out of the lunge. Down with your right and rotate to the right, back to the centre, release from the lunge, and then with the left. If you're feeling a little bit wobbly, your options to make this more stable are to lunge and pop your back knee onto the floor, but that does mean that you've got quite a big strong push up out of your lunge position that your leg muscles may or may not be happy to do. So if you get to this point and you're pushing up and you go, oh, that's really too hard, then your leg muscles aren't happy to do that. Just need a bit more strength in them. Other option is to work on the floor rather than on your mat, because you will be a lot more stable if you're on a hard surface rather than a soft surface. We do one more in each direction. And then following our last repetition of our lunge with our rotation, we're going to climb an imaginary rope. Holding the rope, imagine it's in front of you. I'm going to go hand over hand, stretch up, stretch up, stretch up. So let your shoulders move from side to side. That's going to give you the length in the arm to reach into your rope climb. For 4 more, and 3 more, 2 more, 1 more. You're at the top of the rope. You can release it and let go. Moving into a side stretch. Raise your arm into the air. Bend over to the side. Now grasp your elbow, that's your wrist, with your other hand and pull it over. The result will be a deepening in stretch through the arm, through the shoulder and down through the waist. Okay, we'll release from it. And then we'll raise the opposite arm, move into the side bend, grasp the wrist, definitely the wrist, and draw over into a side stretch. Now, if you notice you've got one side that's a little stiffer than the other, we're doing a set of 6 of these. So you may decide to do 2 of the 6 in the direction that you move very, very nicely in, and 4 of the 6, so you do twice as many, to your stiffer side. Okay, so this is actually my stiffer side, and this is our 4th stretch. So my next 2 stretches, I'm actually going to do to my stiffer side. Now, there's lots of reasons that you might have one side stiffer than the other. My own reason that this side is stiffer is because I have osteoarthritis in my big toe joint. And as a result of that, I keep spraining my ankle on this side. And every time I sprain my ankle, I develop a weird way of walking to overcome the ankle sprain. And that is why this side is stiffer, because it works so much harder when I've sprained my ankle, and that is the result. Okay, we are now going to do some breaststroke preps. Use lunge as a functional movement to take yourself down to the mat, and then place a little pad or a folded towel onto the mat, arms in a W position, legs should be parallel. We're going to engage our core muscles. Slide the shoulder girdle down the back, peel the face and chest away from the mat, release the chest and face down, allow the shoulders to lift to the ears. Draw the shoulder blades down, peel the face and chest off, release the chest and face down, let the shoulders lift to the ears. It's depression of the scapula, followed by a gentle extension into the cervical, which is our neck, and then the thoracic, which is the back of the rib cage, areas of the spine. Should feel like you're trying to lift your breastbone up when you're at the top point. Lumbar spine should be nicely neutral. And you can make sure that if you keep your ribs on the floor at the front, that little curve where your diaphragm sits, you won't be moving into your lumbar curve at all. Next one will be our last one. Sliding shoulder blades down. Peeling face and chest off. Releasing chest and face down, and then shoulders releasing to the ears. Stage 2 position brings hands to the mat. Shoulder girdle retraction, shoulder joint rotation, and then it's definitely the lumbar curve that we're targeting. And we want to increase the lumbar curve. Release the lumbar curve, release the shoulder girdle retraction. Shoulder blades again retract as the shoulder joint rotates in. Deepen that lumbar curve, release the lumbar curve, release the shoulder girdle. Shoulder blades squeeze, rotate, float up, release down, let the shoulders go. Let's go again. Shoulder girdle, shoulder joint, lower back. Release the lower back, release the shoulder girdle, shoulder joint. And final one. And then when we release down, we'll move to stage 3 position, placing our hands underneath our forehead. As you breathe out, you're going to float face, chest and hands off the floor. Breathe in, release down. Lower back muscles will be working quite hard at this point to lift the weight of our head, of our shoulders, of our arms up. Work at a pace and at a rhythm that you feel comfortable with. We're aiming for 2 more repetitions. And then when we have finished that last repetition of our breaststroke preps, we have a go at our shell stretch. Moving to shell stretch, stick your big toes together, gap between your knees, so your knees are about as wide as your pelvis. Sit back towards your heels. Crouch nice and low, give your back muscles a good old stretch out. Arms are long, little fingers towards the edges of the mat, so you've got quite a wide hand position. We'll take a few breaths, nice and deep, using that thoracic breath as we rest in shell. Releasing out of our shell stretch position, we're going to have a go at plank on our front. We're going to use the forearm variation of plank. So we'd normally be here with hands under shoulders and knees underneath hips. I would like you to place your elbows down where your hands were. And then when we engage our core and step ourselves back into plank, our bottom is going to be a little bit lifted up into the air. So we'll be like 2 planks, making a bit of a triangle. Now that's not a good look. Sway your weight forwards into your shoulders and you will feel your tummy muscles working quite hard, I'm going to say at this point. If this feels like it's too much for you, modified plank brings us into this position where our knees have just rested down. So we're in a straight line from our knee to our shoulder rather than when we're in our front plank here, from our ankle to our shoulder. So you pick whichever of those positions works best for you. I'm going to hold for 10 more seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1 before releasing out of our front plank and moving onto our side. Now the exercise that we're going to practice is the side lying obliques. I'm going to show you the easy version and then the harder version. So our easy version keeps one hand in front of us, our legs are glued together. As we exhale, we keep the legs glued together. We raise them and our head and shoulders at the same time. Inhale to release down to the mat. So you've got something to push on with your hand being in front of you. If you feel quite happy and quite balanced here, then it's possible to pop your top hand onto your leg. It's not easy. It's possible, but not easy. Raise up and lower down. And your hand should run down the outside of your leg towards your knees. That will challenge your balance a little bit more than the supported one did. Please pick which position you feel most comfortable with to do the obliques in side lying. And do make sure that you don't roll backwards. You do keep the legs glued together. We'll make the next one our last one, and then we'll stretch the front of our thigh out. Bend both knees. Try to move your top knee back as far as you can to make at least a vertical line with the rest of your body. If you can get the knee a little bit beyond the vertical behind you, then do that. Important to keep the flexibility in our thighs. If you sit down a lot, then you will lose the flexibility in these muscles. And you really need them to keep your hips mobile. Okay, side bend prep. We come up to side saddle position. Now that describes having a long lever, so you're working on your arm, your hand is in weight bearing position, you're sitting on your hip, and your knees are in the position that your top knee is pointed to the ceiling with the top foot in front of the bottom foot and the wrist onto the knee. Your hand, your feet and your hip should make a shallow V position with your hip being the back point of the V, okay? And then as you take your weight into your arm, you can lift your hip, side bend over and release down. You load this shoulder through range of movement. If you are managing a shoulder issue and that prevents you loading your shoulder through its range, then rather than weight bearing on this arm, you side bend over and side bend back in a kneeling position instead. It gives you the movement pattern, but it won't put any stress or strain through your non-weight bearing shoulder. Last time through. Okay. Moving to seated. For I to J, if you're managing any issues with discs, half roll back. If you're free of disc issues, so the out breath takes us down, the in breath takes us up. Spine in the C shape, rectus abdominals working in the inner range for 4 more. And 3. And last 2. And final 1. Moving to side bends reversed. So we're going to side saddle position. Weight bearing, you're working at prep level, reaching the arm over your head as you push away from the mat. So the push away from the mat is important to get this arm to work through its range of movement. If you're not weight bearing, you stretch over, release back. Stretch over, release back. We'll do 4 more. Stretch over, release back. And 3. Last 2. And final 1, into obliques on this side. We lay down, straight line. Little tip, if you look down your body, you shouldn't be able to see your feet when your toes are pointed. Supported position, your hands in front, you're staying with your legs adducted together. Wherever your legs touch when they're on the floor, they should be touching in the same places when they are in the air. Harder version, you're sliding your hand down your leg. Careful not to roll backwards. And we just want to feel it here, okay? So it's your rib cage getting closer to your pelvis. Last 2 repetitions. And then final 1. And we'll release down, bend the knees and move into our thigh stretch, inside leg. Toe dips from tabletop coming up next. The level that you work on depends upon your strength level with this one. So for those of you who can only get one leg up to tabletop with good form, you're going to work with your right leg all the time first for a set of 6, and then you'll change legs, get your left leg into tabletop and work with your left leg for a set of 6. For those of you who can get to a double tabletop correctly, then you can do a set of 12 alternates, okay? And you can start at your double tabletop position. So we're lying down on our back for this exercise. We're positioning our pelvis in neutral, zipping into our core muscles, lengthening the collarbones, reaching the arms down by the sides. So we're making our upper body posture in a really nice and strong, open position. So right leg to tabletop, keeping your abdominal wall flat. This is the easier version. You'll dip 6, come back to tabletop, dip 5. Remember to isolate your movement from your hip joint. Dip 3, dip 2, and then dip 1, leaving the foot down. Keep your zip and hollow left leg to tabletop, dip 6, dip 5. You're practicing moving your leg without letting anything else on your body move. Dip 2 and dip 1. Okay, work at that level again, going back to your right leg if you're working at single knee fold. Now if you're strong enough to get to a double tabletop without pushing your tummy muscles up or wobbling your body, then you're working here and you're doing a set of 12 alternate toe dips from tabletop. It's really important here that your abdominal wall doesn't bulge and you don't get any separation between the sides of the abdominal muscles as you're doing your toe dips. Your movement pattern again, it's from your hip joint. Your body may start to cheat like this, which is just bending your knee and straightening your knee out a little bit, where this movement pattern is here. Okay, so it's definitely from your hip joint that you're moving when you're doing your toe dips. So tabletop describes this position when your knees are vertically direct above your hips. Your shins are pretty much the top of the table, so they're more or less horizontal to the floor to do your toe dips. Last time on each side, releasing down, lengthening one leg and hugging the opposite knee towards your chest for your hip flexor stretch. Your pelvis will tilt backwards, your lower back will press to the floor when you do this, and your stretch will be felt across the hip and into the thigh. You may or may not be able to keep pressing the back knee of that straight leg down to the floor, but do try it if you can to keep the leg as straight as you can. We'll switch sides and we'll do hip flexor stretch on the opposite side. So it's about the stretch here, across the hip on the long leg. Our next exercise is a heel glide or a heel slide. And if you're doing heel slides, you're starting neutral pelvis, neutral spine, keeping this bit nice and still, nice and stable as you do alternate heel slides down the mat, so you're not wobbling from side to side. Your pelvis doesn't tip forwards and back as you're moving your legs. If you can get to a double tabletop with correct form, you've got a heel slide action, but in the air. It's known as a heel glide, and it's definitely harder. You can use the feedback of the back of your pelvis, maintaining the same contact point between the back of the pelvis and the mat when you're doing your heel glides. We'll go for one more on each side. and a hamstring stretch when we finish, pushing one foot to the floor, one foot to the ceiling, and draw to the point where you feel the stretch at the back of the thigh. You should feel slightly uncomfortable. Let's do a little bit of ankle mobility as we're holding our hamstring stretch. A set of 6 circles of your ankle going in one direction. And then complete a set of 6 ankle circles going in the opposite direction. Release the ankle, release the leg, and stretch into the opposite side, finding your hamstring stretch first. Do remember that if you have a sciatic nerve that can be a little bit irritable whenever you do your hamstring stretch, just keep a little bit of a bend in your knee. It will lessen the chances of you irritating your sciatic nerve. So doing a set of 6 ankle circles in one direction, and then completing a set of 6 ankle circles in the opposite direction. Okay, our next exercise will be a static bridge. I'm going to do a set of 4 heel raises when we're in bridge. To do static bridge, you start in neutral, you push into your feet and pick your pelvis up, clenching your buttocks to get to the top of the bridge. Maintain the bridge, 4 alternate heel raises, followed by rolling from the top of your spine down towards your pelvis to get out of bridge. You'll get back to neutral pelvis, neutral lumbar spine, push into your feet again, clench your buttocks to lift up to bridge. You may prefer this time to do a set of 4 double heel raises if you felt that the singles didn't challenge you enough. And we'll follow that again by rolling down. Of course, you might prefer to stay with the alternate single heel raises. Find neutral, push up, and then heels for 4, lower, 3, lower, 2, lower, and 1. Lower the heel, roll out to the bridge, push into the bridge, heels, 4, lower, 3, lower, 2, lower, 1. Lower the heels, roll out to the bridge. Let's do 2 more repetitions. Push into bridge, heels, 4, lower, 3, lower, 2, lower, 1. Lower the heels, roll out to the bridge. Last time, push into bridge, lift the heels. 4, lower, 3, lower, 2, lower, 1. Lower the heels, roll down out to the bridge, move to figure of 4 stretch, placing one ankle onto the opposite knee, raising the supporting leg, and feeling the stretch in the external hip rotators, which are roughly in your bottom. So they connect your leg to your pelvis. Release and change sides. You turn your knee out to the side and lift your supporting leg for more depth to your stretch. Right, I'm going to set the harder level off first with the next exercise. This is our lovingly named dying bug exercise. And at its hard level, you start with a double tabletop leg, arms reaching to the ceiling. You work on the diagonal, doing a toe dip with a thumb drop, and then you change your diagonal each time. So this part of your body here should not move when you do this. Your tummy muscles, get it right, Ruth. Tummy muscles should stay nice and flat. Back should stay neutral, pelvis should stay in neutral. If this is not the right level for you, you will be working at the level where you do. This is my left leg and my right thumb. So we're doing toe dip and thumb on this diagonal for a set of 6. Once you've done your set of 6, you can release down out of it, set it up on the opposite side. This is my right leg, this is my left arm. You might be looking at the video and thinking, Ruth, you've got that completely the wrong way around. The camera actually records everything backwards, which is a bit weird. And this is our last one on this side. We'll move to full body stretch, extending the legs, reaching the arms over the head. And just let your body soften into position. And then we'll release from our full body stretch. Okay, if anybody's managing osteoporosis in the spine, your next exercise, you're stabilizing in neutral and you're practicing knee folds into and out of tabletop. This is single knee fold, but you might find that you're working your double knee folds into and out of tabletop. If you're strong enough to do both legs simultaneously, you may be working at that level where you are raising and lowering both of your legs in and out of tabletop at the same time. For those of you who don't have any reason to suspect that you may have osteoporosis in your spine, so generally if you're over the age of 50, you're at risk, but if you're under the age of 50, then you're less at risk. You can work on your roll-up prep, where we're reaching towards our knees and releasing down. You may or may not get all the way up towards your knees. You may actually get up to seated. I don't want you to try to force yourself up to seated if you don't just go there automatically. If you don't just go there automatically to your seated position, that's fine. But it is a roll up, so you're doing flexion of your neck, your upper, mid and lower back before releasing back down. Please make sure you are flexing and you're not lifting in a long straight line. The roll up is a whole body exercise which requires us to have good flexibility in our spine, good strength in our abdominals, and again flexibility and strength in the hip flexors to match that of the abdominals. Next one can be our last one, whether you're doing your knee folds, your roll up prep or your roll up. Okay, when we finish on the mat, it's the 100 we're going to practice. Move to either a single or double tabletop position. Again, any osteoporosis, keep your head down for this one. Float your arms only. If you're free, come up to the top of your ab prep. Right leg goes out and 50 beats, right leg extended. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 4, 10, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 20, in, 2, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 30, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 4, 40, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, change legs, breathe, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 4, 60, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 70, in, 2, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 80, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 90, in, 2, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 400, tuck, release down. Lengthen one leg away, keep the other leg at tabletop, stretch the arms out to a T position, move to rotational stretch. With the rotational stretch, you're looking the opposite way from the direction that you took that knee over. So if you took your knee right, you're looking left and vice versa. We'll come back out of our rotation, head comes back to centre, we switch the legs over. So we've got one leg straight, the other leg at tabletop. Your tabletop leg goes the opposite way over, and you turn your head and look at your hand. Release from the stretch, come back to centre and lengthen away. Okay, we are going to move into seated next. And the easiest way to do that is to roll to your side and push up, especially if you are managing any issues with your back. That will be the least stressful way for you to get there. Soles of the feet together, butterfly stretch, sit tall. You may find that placing your hands behind you and using them to push your spine up into a nice tall seated position gives you a better stretch. We'll do a kneeling hip flexor stretch by bringing the knees together, coming through to a kneeling position, tucking the towel between the legs to stretch into the hip. And then changing that to the opposite side. A nice tuck. Cat stretch next. Come to hands and knees. Flex the spine, push the mat away from you, separate your shoulder blades. Extend the spine, sticking your chin and your bottom up into the air. Flex the spine, push away. Extend the spine, push up. Let's do one more, flex the spine. And then extend the spine. Come to a neutral spine position, hands off the mat, best foot forwards, lunge as a functional movement to standing, calf stretch and chest stretch, linking your hands together, taking your elbows back, releasing, calf stretch, upper back stretch, hold on to your elbows, drop your chin towards your chest. A little bit of pressure on those elbows will separate your shoulder blades from each other. Release to standing for tricep stretches, taking one hand between the shoulder blades, elbow towards the back of your head. Releasing and changing, opposite hand and elbow comes in. Releasing, rolling the shoulders back, shaking out the hips, stretch out the fingers, take a deep breath in, stretch to the ceiling, gaze up at the hands, release forwards. Well done everyone, hope you enjoyed that. And you can now feel your tummy muscles have had a good old workout, mine have.